Hello, Bobcats. We are still in Chapter 6. We're on Lesson 4 today. We're going to be looking at using a model in order to multiply a decimal. It is a 5th grade standard. It is something we have to learn. And again, I'm hoping that models will help us multiply with decimals. Why, Mrs. Wilhite? Why are we learning this today? Well, I think models really help you understand the value of a number. Being able to see a visual, an image, or a diagram can sometimes help you see what the value of that number is. It'll also help you see if your answer is reasonable. Does it make sense? So hopefully you'll be able to multiply with decimals today using models. All right, what do you already know about the value of decimals? Remember, value is how much it's worth. Well, I know that one single square is equal to 1/100th, or 1 out of 100. It's kind of like this little tiny one right here is the value of that one square, 1 out of 100. Okay, I know that you can represent tenths using a column like this. This is tenths, or 1 dime. Okay, you put the 1 in the tenths place. You can look at it as one of these columns. 10 out of 100. Okay, and I also remember that this whole diagram can be hundredths, right? It's 100 square. It's less than 1. Okay, if we look at this, it says, how are these equations similar and how are they different? Well, let's talk about how they are the same. 3 times 7 is 21. 3 tenths times 7 tenths is 21/100ths. Something that's the same or similar is they both have a 3 times a 7. They both have an answer with 21 as the digits. But how are they different? Well, these equations are different because their answers are different. They're the same digits, the same numbers, but they have a different value. 21, which is 3 times 7, and 21/100ths is completely different when you think about value. 21 as a whole number is 21 $1 bills, or a $20 bill and one more. 21/100ths is 2 dimes, 20 cents, and 1 penny. So from my experience, I know that the decimal is really important when we're talking about value, how much a number is worth. I also know that the model or a diagram can help me understand if it's bigger than 1, if it's a whole, if it's less than 1, maybe a tenth, a dime, or even a penny, 1 out of 100. And that's going to help us today. All right, let's talk about the steps. 1, we're going to shade the first value. So color it in. Model how much you have in the first value. Step 2, we're going to shade the second value. Color in your diagram how much we have for the second value. Step 3, we're going to count all the shaded region. We're going to put it together. We're going to figure out how much is shaded in the first value and the second value together, so that we can solve. Finally, we can see, is it reasonable? Does the answer make sense? Shade the first one, shade the second one, so you can count and solve. See if it makes sense. See if your answer is reasonable. Shade the decimal models to find each product. Well, remember step 1, shade the first value. I'm going to shade 4 tenths. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, step 2, go ahead and shade your second value. My second value is 8 tenths. All right, well, here's 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths, 7, 8 tenths. Step 1, shade the first value. Done. Step 2, shade the second value. Done. Step 3, count how many you have. Okay, this is the key part. I'm going to count the part that's shaded together. the part that's red and green to figure out my answer. So shade the first part, shade the second part, and then count how much is shaded in red and green, both colors. All right, well, I have 4 times the 8, so 4, 8, 12, 16, 24, 28, and then 32. I have 32 shaded. Okay, but 32 not as a whole number, 32 hundredths, 32 out of 100. So it's a decimal, it's less than 1. So I know the answer is 32 over 100. The last step, is it reasonable? Well, that's what told me to put the decimal in there. It's not reasonable to write 32 as a whole number with no decimal. That's too big. So I know the decimal has to be there because I shaded 32 out of 100, making sure that 2 is in the hundredths place. I can move on. All right, well, we're going to shade the first value. There's 5 tenths. 5 is in the tens place, so that's 5 of these columns of 10. Okay, and then I'm going to shade the second value, and I'm going to use a different color, maybe red, and I'm going to shade in 6 tenths. Here's 1, 2 tenths, 3, 4, 5, 6. Step 3 is count. Count how many are shaded in purple and red. Well, altogether there's 30 shaded. So I solved. But is it reasonable? No, it's not reasonable. It's not 30 as a whole number. I have 30 out of 100. I need to make sure that 0 is in the hundredths place. And it goes tenths, hundredths. So I know I have the right answer. 5 tenths times 6 tenths is 30 hundredths, less than 1. All right, let's keep practicing. We're going to shade the decimal models to find each product. I'm going to shade 2 tenths for the first value. Step 2, shade the second value. Well, I have 9 tenths. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now I need to figure out how many, I'm going to count, how many are shaded in red and green. Well, I have 18 that are shaded in red and green. Okay, but if I solve and I put 18, that's not reasonable. It's not reasonable to start with less than 1, and then end up with 18 wholes, right? So I know I have to make sure the answer is in the hundredths place. I have shaded 18 out of 100. So the 8 has to be in the hundredths place. That's reasonable. I have the right answer. I'm going to go ahead and shade 4 tenths. And then I can go ahead and shade 6 tenths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to count how many are shaded in green and orange together. And I can see that there's 24 shaded together. Okay, I got to solve. See where it's reasonable. Well, I can see there's 24 shaded out of 100, making sure the 4 is in the hundredths place. I can move on. Okay, shade the decimal models to find each product. Okay, well, I'm going to shade 1 and 8 tenths, and I'm going to do that for 3 tenths. So let's go ahead and shade the first value. I'm going to shade 1 and 8 tenths all the way over to 8, and I'm going to do that for 3 tenths. Okay, so I'm starting to combine it a little bit more. So down here I've shaded 1 hole, right? Here's the line, that's 1 hole. And then I shaded 8 tenths out of the next one. And over here you can see that I did 3 tenths. So now I can figure out how much is shaded. How much do I have here? I can combine it so you can see it all together down here. And all together down below, if we combine it, I have 50, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And then I'm going to have 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and if you're not sure, you can count it. So we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, 39, 36, 39, 41, 44, 47, 50, and then there's that 54. 51, 54. So if you're wondering, you can count individually how many there are. Okay, so we can see I concluded the answer is 54 hundredths. It's reasonable because I have altogether 54, not a whole number, but 54 shaded in the hundredths grid. So my 4 is in the hundredths place. It makes sense. Let's try another one like this. These can be a little more challenging when you have something bigger than a whole and you're trying to combine it. Let's do another one. All right, we're going to shade the decimal models to find each product. Well, I'm going to go ahead and shade 1 and 4/10. So 1 whole and 4/10 of another one. So I'm going to shade in 1 full one and 4 out of the next one. And I'm going to go ahead and do that 2 times. So let's do that one more time right above it. So I'm going to shade all of this in right here. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and combine it, or I'm going to count it and figure out how much is shaded down below. Well, I know that there's 20 shaded here, right? Okay, and then over here I have 8 more. So I can combine that together to put 28 hundredths. Okay, so 10 representing the first 10. And then I'm going to have 10 more representing that second 10. And then I'm going to have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Representing the 8 over here. So I surmise or establish the answer to be 28 hundredths. It's reasonable because I have 28 in the hundredths place, or 28 out of 100. I'm ready to move on. Let's apply it. Diana's house has a rectangular window on the door with a height of 1 5/10 of a foot and a width of 8/10 of a foot. What is the area of the window? So I'm going to be multiplying. We're going to do 15/10 times 8/10. Make sure that decimal's there. And figure out what is the answer. Shade the decimal models to solve the problem. Well, I'm going to go ahead and shade 1 and 5 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go ahead and shade in 1 and 5 more. And I need to do that 8 different times. So there's 1, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I can go ahead and make sure that's all shaded in. All right, so 15/10, or 1 5/10, 8 times. How much is it together? How much is shaded all together? I can count it up to put it into this model down below. Well, I already can see that I've done this full group of 10 8 times, right? And then I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Okay, and now I just need to make sure that I include what's left. How much is over here? Well, I know that I had, let's count it up to make it a little bit easier. There's 5 here. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. So I need to do 40 more. 10, 20, that's a full one. 30, 40. So how much is shaded all together? Well, I have a whole number. I have 100 here. So 1 as a whole and a decimal because I have part of the next one. And I have 20 out of 100, or 2 parts out of 100. So the correct answer is 1 and 2 square feet. So what is the area of the window? I found it using a shaded model. All right, what did you learn today? Well, I learned that you can find the value of numbers using models, right? If you're coloring hundredths, we're talking about pennies. If you're coloring in a whole column of 10, like 3/10, we're talking about 3 dimes, 3/10, right? This is 4 pennies. I also learned that if you shade a whole 100 model, then that's a whole number. So in summary, I learned that you can use models to multiply. You can see the value of the numbers by using those models. Hopefully, Bobcats, it will help you today solve your problem by using those steps. Thank you for your attention. Have a great day.